Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2022 music epic Elvis. Now, Elvis is one of those films that I liked the trailer for it. I thought it looked like a fun movie to watch just for the visual style, and it really surprised me. In fact, I've seen this film 3 times now, and I could easily see myself seeing it more times than that. I really liked this film. In fact, I would say for the most part, I loved it. And I know it's a very polarizing film. There are a lot of people who hate this movie. They hate the look of it. They hate the style. They hate the editing. They hate the way that it's directed. They can't stand a lot of aspects of it. They are really upset at how it portrays or handles Elvis's life and his story. And I can understand all of those criticisms. I just don't personally agree with them being bad enough to outweigh all the good that this film provides. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, I want to give a special shout out to Brock for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, the film is directed by Baz Luhrmann, and Baz Luhrmann is one of those directors whose style you either admire, you either appreciate, or you absolutely despise it. There's no in between. I've yet to see anybody who is in the middle when it comes to Baz Luhrmann's style of directing. It's very loud, it's very in your face, it's very flashy, it's incredibly over the top. There's a lot of different types of edits, there's a lot of different camera tricks, and uh, a lot of stuff going on at once. But I love it. I love it when directors take risks like this. I love it when directors go overboard with their visuals. That's a big reason why I like this film so much. It's just the way it looks. I love watching this movie because of just how dynamic the direction is, how dazzling the style and the presentation is with this movie. I love how Boz captures the larger than life spectacle of Elvis in ways that no other film had done before. And as someone who never really got why Elvis was such a big deal, like this really solidified in my mind and in my eyes that, you know what? Elvis was a pretty big deal. I can see why people were so drawn to him. I can see why his concerts were considered to be something that was epic and for the ages, because he does have that magnetic personality. He draws you to him when he's on stage, and he couples that with some genuinely good pipes. He actually was a legitimately good singer. And that showed very evidently near the end of his life when he was bloated, he was sick, he could barely even stand up. He couldn't even show the same nonstop crazy uh hunk of burning love energy that he showcased in concert after concert for years anymore, because he was just done. He was spent. His body was giving up on him. And even after all of that, and even with all of that going against him, he sells out a packed crowd and sings a song with just so much energy and soul that it gives you chills, even though he can't even stand up. He's sitting there in front of the piano and he's singing. I think it was Unchained Melody. I think that was the name of the song. I believe it's a cover of another artist's song. And he's singing this song and he's just pouring his heart and soul into the vocals, and it's powerful stuff. And I think Luhrmann just captures that and so much else when it comes to Elvis, that it more than makes up for a lot of the other flaws or issues that this film has. Um, and also, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch a director play around in a sandbox like this and just go for broke. I'd rather a director take risks visually like Lerman does here than play it safe, because playing it safe is boring when it comes to direction. And Elvis, he was such a spectacle in his life that the last thing you want to do is be boring when it comes to the visual style. And Elvis is definitely not one of those movies. The way that he works with the camera movement and showcases various different types of techniques, works with color and transitions in ways that are just really creative and genuinely cool. And it's a lot all at once, in your face. It does not build up. It just starts off with this just cacophony and just absolute barrage of just over the top visuals. But I love that about the movie. I was like, okay, we are going for the jugular right away. We're going to grab you by the throat and put you in this roller coaster, and you're going to enjoy this Elvis themed attraction. And I definitely did. And I will absolutely continue to enjoy it, because I just love the look of this movie. I really do. I think Baz Luhrmann did an amazing job. Um, and I think he worked well with this cast too. Other than maybe Tom Hanks, I think he should have told Tom Hanks to not do the accent. But Austin Butler is awe-inspiring in this as Elvis. Uh, he is just astonishing, and I think in large part it's due to how Boz shoots him in the film. Now, Baz Luhrmann also helped write the script along with a bunch of other writers, Sam Bromell, Craig Pierce, and Jeremy Donner. And it's based on a story by Baz Luhrmann and Jeremy Donner. And the script is absolutely one of the most divisive things about this movie, other than the direction, because a lot of people aren't into Baz Luhrmann's style. But even people that are into his style, they are not necessarily always that fond of the narrative and the way that it unfolds. And I get it. I understand that. It's a film called Elvis, and there's a lot of focus on Colonel Tom Parker. In fact, he starts out narrating the movie, but I don't think you can tell the Elvis story without having Colonel Tom Parker, because he was that integral to Elvis's success and his fame, as well as his fall. So I think it's something that you definitely have to have in the narrative, but maybe not have it so much up front and in your face from frame one, that kind of thing. But I think I understand what they were trying to go for. They're trying to have it be like a framing device. Colonel Tom Parker and his idea, his personal view of what happened with him and Elvis, is the framing device for the other parts of Elvis's story that don't always necessarily have to do with Parker. And it's very akin to something like The Greatest Showman, and I get it because Tom Parker was at one point in his life a carnival huckster. You know, he was a carnival con man. Um, but I do feel that at times it does have a little too much of a focus on Colonel Tom Parker. And I think the script could have kind of eased back on that a little. Also, it does take a lot of creative liberties to the point where it's understandable that it's a turnoff for some people. But I like that about the film. It's another instance of taking risks and trying to create something different, trying to create something unique. And Rocket Man did a lot of that, and I love that film, and I still absolutely admire and just adore that movie. But there's a lot of things about that aren't even accurate to Elton John's life and his career, and Elvis is very similar to that in terms of the way that it tells its story. There's a lot of inaccuracies here, but what it does right, I think, for the most part, outweighs the problems that I have with this script because it covers all of the most important beats of Elvis's life and his career. It doesn't miss any of them. There are some things that maybe could have been put in there, might have made things a little more interesting at times, but I understand why some of the more, let's just say, less than desirable traits or parts of Elvis's life, the controversies and stuff like that. I can see why that is not really much of a focus here. For one, the Elvis estate probably wouldn't allow that to happen. And two, I think that would just kind of take away from what the film is trying to do, which I think it's trying to be at its core with this narrative. It's trying to be a tribute to Elvis as a performer, Elvis's music, Elvis's star. And I think in that regard, the film really works because it does a great job making Elvis look like a god in the industry. And this larger than life comic book rock and roll superhero. And I really like that about the movie. It's just something that I think works. And I love the way that the script connects Elvis's love for Captain Marvel Jr. into the film in terms of certain lines of dialogue about the Rock of Eternity. And I like how the film is structured in terms of dealing with Elvis at his peak early in the movie, kind of going backwards in time, and then at times kind of jumping back and forth, which I can see why some people might find that exhausting, but I find it intriguing. And I think the way that the script handles it for the most part is actually pretty effective. And it uses a lot of Elvis's music to move the story along, move the narrative along, and to do a little bit of commentary about society around the time of his life, and makes you think, even though a lot of the stuff that the script portrays in terms of certain events in Elvis's life didn't really happen that way. I think it works as an opera, as like a pop opera. I've seen people use that term for this movie, and I think it's a perfect way to describe this screenplay. It's a pop opera. It takes Elvis's greatest hits in terms of the music and the most important and most memorable and iconic moments of his life and his career, and puts them together and weaves them in a narrative that, while not necessarily true to reality, it's true to his spirit. It's true to the soul of Elvis. And I think that is something that is far more powerful, far more impactful as a viewer than just playing it safe and just giving a paint by numbers account of Elvis's life. I know for some people that's what they wanted from this, and I can understand why some people are disappointed because it doesn't give them that. But I didn't want that. And I wanted something unique. I wanted something different. I wanted something to capture the soul of Elvis and his music, while creating something that felt new. And I really feel that this film accomplishes that. But yeah, like I said, could have eased back on the focus on Colonel Tom Parker. Uh, could have had maybe a few scenes kind of trimmed down a little bit in terms of the narrative, because it kind of loses some steam at times. But other than maybe a few more moments of heavier drama and angst, which I feel are some of the most uh, memorable and strong elements of this script, are the moments where Elvis breaks down. Either he breaks down and cries and shows vulnerability, and honestly appears more human, uh, or the moments when he's upset at Colonel Tom Parker and he's just upset and just absolutely enraged at the trap that he's caught in, which really ties into the song Suspicious Minds, which I just love the way that the script does that, and has this whole sequence where he's singing that song and he's directing it towards Colonel Tom Parker and the situation that he's been forced into by Parker, where now he's just chained to being stuck in Las Vegas and chained to Tom Parker because of all the debts. And it also leads to Elvis being just a shell of himself, just completely becoming more apathetic, more depressed, and it leads to, in my opinion, another really good moment in this script between him and Priscilla, where Elvis and Priscilla are having one last moment. Pretty, I think it was like a year before the year that Elvis eventually died in 1977. So it was, I think this scene was supposed to take place I guess in 1976 maybe. And he's at the airport, and Priscilla is pleading with him to get help, to go to rehab, because he's addicted to these pills, he's addicted to all these type of drugs, and you can tell that it's really starting to take its toll on him. I mean, he's even walking around with a cane. It's getting that bad. And she's trying to get through to him, not only for him, but for his daughter, Lisa Marie. And she just isn't able to. She, one last time, tries to tell him, if you can dream it, you can do it. Something that Elvis has always adhered to for most of his life until that point. And I just love the line of dialogue that the writers have here, where Elvis's response is, "I'm all out of dreams." You're like, oh, it really hits you right in the heart. And yeah, I would say the rise of Elvis is fun, and it's upbeat and it's peppy, and there's a lot of enjoyment to be had from that. But really, what makes this film and what makes this script good for me is these moments, the moments where it shows Elvis at his lowest. It shows Elvis addicted to pills. It shows Elvis cheating on his wife near the end of their relationship. It doesn't show him in the best light. It shows him paranoid and shooting television monitors. It shows him just completely succumbing to the weight of his stardom, and just the unbelievable stress that was put on his body and his mind when it comes to just how overworked he was. And that leads to the final performance, where he's just completely a different person compared to the showman, the handsome, attractive, just comic book come to life character, and now he's reduced to this fat, just shell of himself. And he still has one thing left, though: his love for music and his love for his fans. And you really do feel that. It feels very palpable. And I think in large part due to the script. You also feel his angst and his frustration because of what happened with him and Tom Parker, where Tom Parker used him. And I do like the way that the script treats Parker like some over the top villain. I know some people hate that about the movie, but I like that about it because of the fact that it really does tie into that comic book style that I think the narrative is trying to go for. There's even a sequence at one point early in the movie where you see a comic strip retelling of a part of Elvis's childhood. So I think it fits to have Tom Parker be this over the top comic book villain who is pulling the strings behind the scenes and just being so manipulative, and to the point where in the last bit of narration you have with Tom Parker, he deflects blame. He deflects the blame from himself when it comes to all the criticism that he received about him being responsible for Elvis's demise and Elvis's death because of how he overworked him and had this guy named Dr. Nick do whatever he possibly could to get Elvis to do a show, and didn't care. It was all about money. It was all about keeping the residency at the International so he could have unlimited credit at the casino because he was in debt. And he deflects all of it. And he says, "It was you, the viewer. It was you. You were the one." Because he just couldn't get away. He couldn't get away from your love for him. And it's just like, oh my God. Like, what a low thing to do. But I like that. It's another example of the script being daring. And the stuff with Priscilla, I know there's a lot of people who wanted the film maybe to talk about how controversial that was and condemn Elvis for being in that relationship. But the reality is, times were a lot different back then. And Priscilla, in her own biography, said that Elvis did not have any sexual relations with her until she was of age. And I understand why some people feel that that might be an instance of grooming, but Priscilla herself does not feel or does not agree with that. So I'm going to go with the woman that was involved in that relationship. I'm going to go with her opinion of things. And also, it is true. Things were different back then compared to now. But it is it's a little you know. Some guy in his 20s dating a 14 year old. It is something that's like, does make you pause. But I actually like the fact the film didn't really focus on that, because I think that really would have been out of place when it comes to the tone and what they're trying to do with this film. And it's also something that would have never been allowed by the Presley estate. So um, I'm not really that upset like other critics are when it comes to the fact that they didn't really focus on that a lot. They focused on a more romanticized version of that relationship. Um, but it's a romanticized film. And when it comes to its narrative, from the opening sequence all the way to the end of the movie. But yeah, I like the script. I think it's got some nice lines of dialogue as well between various different characters, whether it's Elvis himself or Tom Parker or other people who are part of his life, like his father or um, his mother or even Priscilla. Um, I think the script does a much better job humanizing and making these characters that are in a lot of ways larger than life when it comes to their presentation feel raw, feel human, feel like they have a soul. Um, but that's just me personally. But yeah, overall, I like the script. I think it's a good script. I really do. Despite its historical accuracies and its issues. Just like I think this cast is great. I think this is a really good cast. Of course, fronted by Austin Butler as Elvis. This is the definitive de facto Elvis performance on film. I don't think there's anyone that's going to come close ever again to capturing the energy, the charisma, and just the spectacle of who Elvis was. Austin Butler was amazing. He deserves his Golden Globe. He deserves his Oscar nomination. If he wins the Oscar for this performance, I think he deserves it. He is just absolutely mesmerizing. You cannot take your eyes off of him. He is just so much zeroed in and just completely tied into Elvis as a performer and as a person. I think his Elvis voice, I think it's also really a good. It didn't really sound like other Elvis impersonators I've heard in the past, and his singing was really impressive because this isn't an instance of him lip syncing, having some other person sing. No, Austin Butler's doing the Elvis accent. He's doing the vocals. He's doing the actions on stage. He's showing that just insane fireball energy that Elvis became famous for in his prime. He showed the stuff with the hips and everything that you can understand why it might make some people during a time when that was not allowed or not considered acceptable or not seen that much at all. You can see why that was something that just made them lose their minds. And I think a large part, it's really what Austin Butler brings to the role, brings to the performance. And there are moments of vulnerability. There are moments where Elvis breaks down and cries, like when his mother dies. There are moments where he's showing different kinds of frailty. There are moments when he's a king. He is the king. He's the king of rock and roll. No one could touch him. And then there's other moments where he's bitter, he's jaded, he's angry. And he's calling his longtime friend and promoter a toad and threatening to shoot him. And it's all really effective on an equal level because Austin Butler was just amazing. Tom Hanks, he gets a lot of flack for this performance. And on one hand, I get it. The accent is ridiculous. I don't know what he was thinking with that. It's hard to take Tom Parker seriously a lot of the time because of that. But part of me thinks that Parker wasn't even necessarily meant to be taken seriously a good chunk of the time. He was meant to be taken as seriously as a Batman villain from the 60s TV show. But that might not have been the best approach. And I do feel there are moments where you are supposed to laugh at his portrayal of Parker. But then there's other moments where I think they're trying to take it seriously. and you just can't have your cake and eat it too in this instance. I don't even think the fat suit is bad. I think it's actually a really good bit of makeup. I think they did a good job, the makeup effects artists, with the fat suit that Tom Hanks uh, was working with in Elvis. But the accent was a no go, and it is a very over the top performance, but it's kind of intended to be that way. And as bad as the performance can be at times with this accent and everything, I don't think it's totally abysmal. I don't think it's a total misfire. I actually am rather entertained by it most of the time, in large part because of the fact that Tom Hanks is clearly having a blast playing this character. He is chewing up the scenery, and because of just how charismatic and likable and lovable of a actor he is and has been for most of his career, there's just something genuinely different about him playing such a manipulative toad of a character. And there's a certain mesmerizing quality to his Tom Parker for me. In some ways, it's a train wreck kind of quality, but in other ways, it's actually a pretty decent performance by Tom Hanks. So I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make it out to be, but I can get why people aren't really big fans of what he brought to the role. Olivia DeJonge, I thought she did a really solid job as Priscilla in the little scenes that she has. She definitely does make the most out of them. You can tell why Elvis fell in love with her. She just has a certain quality to her that's just very endearing. And Helen Thomson as Gladys Presley, his mother, I thought she was remarkable. I thought it was a really good performance by her. Richard Roxburgh, I also thought did a great job as Vernon, Elvis's father. Kelvin Harrison Jr. Was a little standout as BB King. Um, you also had like a few other actors and actresses, but I'm trying to think of who else. Yeah, I want to mention Shanka Ducre as Big Mama Thornton because I thought she was really terrific and just a really talented performer herself. Um, but other than that, I mean, I don't really know who else to really mention in terms of the cast. Because really, it's just mostly Austin Butler, Tom Hanks, Olivia DeJonge, Helen Thomson, Richard Roxburgh. Like those are the performers that get majority of the screen time. You also have guys like Steve Bender, played by Adrice Montgomery, or Luke Bracey, who plays Jerry Schilling. Who's a member of the Memphis Mafia. Um, and their performances are pretty good as well. But yeah, there really isn't, in my opinion, a performer here that just flat out sucks. Like I know a lot of people feel that way about Tom Hanks, but I don't really agree with that. I don't. And the film features some cinematography by Mandy Walker, which is magnificent, just marvelous. This film is just absolutely breathtaking at times. There's one shot in particular that I just absolutely just cannot get enough of, and it's a sequence after the fictional concert that Elvis has when he sings Trouble, after he's getting involved and embroiled in all this controversy about uh, the moves that he's making on stage and everything about who he is as a performer. And as he's being essentially taken away in a police car, he's looking up at the fireworks display through the window of the car, and the camera is turned upside down, and he's looking up and then sees the fireworks reflected in the windshield, or in the back. I don't really think it's a windshield. It's just in the back window, and that scene is just, oh my god, it is just so spectacular. Such a great visual. And there's a lot of other moments like that. Just the concert scenes. It's one of those things where I wish I did see this in the theater, because I really think it would have been even more incredible and even more of a spectacle. But yeah, I love the way the film is shot by Mandy Walker and Baz Luhrmann. And I like the editing by Matt Vila and Jonathan Redmond. I know a lot of people don't like this editing. A lot of split screen, a lot of quick cuts, a lot of back and forth stuff from one scene, from one particular time period, and then flash into another. Or you'll have one performer singing that Elvis was inspired by, and then have cut it with Elvis singing. And I get it. I understand why some people just find that obnoxious. I like it. I like the way this film is edited. It's a big reason why I love this movie, because it is. It's daring. It's risky. It takes chances. Everything that I want films to do. I don't want films to play it safe most of the time when it comes to editing, visuals. I would rather them swing for the fences and try to do something different and try to be something unique than just kind of deliver the same stale everyday kind of result or product, especially for a film like this. There are some times where that kind of style, that kind of editing, that kind of direction is too jarring and doesn't really work with the subject matter. But this is Elvis we're talking about. So I think it works. I think it's very fitting because it matches Elvis's energy and matches the energy that he shows on stage. And the film is quite long. It's over 2 hours. But never really felt like it was as tedious of a film to sit through as a lot of other critics. I think it goes by at a pretty good pace. It's very fractured in its storytelling, and a lot of times that can really bug me when it comes to other kinds of films. But like I said, it's more of a pop opera. It's more of like a Broadway show, akin to what Rocket Man was. And I loved Rocket Man. And because I loved Rocket Man, I loved Elvis. I just like this style. I like this way of telling a story and showcasing the legacy of a big, popular, well-known musician by capturing the soul and the spirit of their music as well as who they are as performers. And I think also I'm just a very musical guy. I spent a good chunk of my life around music. I sang in the choir, and I miss singing in front of people and feeling that unique feeling that you get when you sing and you just pour your soul out to an audience. It's something that you can't replicate, but damn, does this film do as good of a job as you can possibly do when it comes to replicating that feeling. And that feeling is addicting. That feeling is amazing. And I just, I think when a film taps into that for me, it, for the most part, tends to win me over. And I know for some people that doesn't mean anything, but for me, yeah, you want to tap into something, you want to make me overlook certain flaws and certain things that might bother me when it comes to other movies. You tap into that kind of feeling, tap right into my soul, and I'll I'll give that I'll give that stuff a pass because of just how you're able to just resonate with me on a level that very few films are able to do. When a film taps you in your soul, it's it's a good movie. And I feel Elvis is a good movie. It's I think it's a great film. I would recommend it if you are, especially if you're a fan of Elvis, fan of his music, and even if you're not, I would recommend it just for the visuals and for Austin Butler's just absolutely astounding performance. Elvis has left the building.